It all started on a perfectly normal Friday night. The date was July 11th, 2025. I remember because it was the middle of summer, and the air was thick and heavy. The kind of night where you can hear every cricket chirping outside your window. I was at home just doing my usual thing. I had ordered a large pepperoni pizza, my go-to comfort food after a long week. The TV was on, playing some old sitcom I'd seen 100 times. The familiar laugh track echoed through my small, quiet house. It was just me and my cat, Mittens, who was curled up on the arm of the sofa, purring loudly. I felt completely safe and relaxed. Nothing felt out of place. It was the definition of an ordinary evening. I finished my pizza and decided to clean up the kitchen. The house was silent except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the gentle sound of running water as I washed the dishes. I remember looking out the kitchen window into my backyard. The moon was bright, casting long, strange shadows across the lawn. The big oak tree in the corner looked like a giant sleeping creature in the dark. I didn't think much of it at the time. It was just a tree. I finished up in the kitchen, turned off the light, and headed back to the living room, feeling content and ready to wind down for the night. The house was my sanctuary, a place where the outside world couldn't bother me. As I settled back onto the sofa, Mittens suddenly sat up. Her ears twitched, and her eyes were wide, staring intently at something down the hallway. Her purring stopped completely. I called her name, but she didn't move. She just kept staring, her body tense and ready to spring. A small shiver went down my spine. Animals can sense things we can't, right? That's what people always say. I tried to laugh it off, thinking she probably just heard a mouse in the walls or a car driving by. But the silence in the house was suddenly different. It wasn't peaceful anymore. It felt heavy, like it was waiting for something to happen. I strained my ears, listening for any unusual sound. I told myself I was being silly. It was just an old house. Old houses make noises. That's what they do. I tried to focus back on the TV, but my eyes kept darting towards the dark hallway. Mittens hadn't moved an inch. She was still frozen, a furry little statue of pure alert. The air in the room felt colder, and I pulled a blanket around my shoulders. I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone anymore. It was a strange primal fear that creeps up on you slowly, making the hairs on your arms stand up. The ordinary night was starting to feel anything but ordinary, and a knot of anxiety began to form in my stomach. I decided I needed to check things out just to put my mind at ease. I muted the TV, plunging the room into near silence. I stood up slowly and walked towards the hallway. "It's nothing," I whispered to myself, trying to sound brave. Probably just the wind. I peered into the darkness but saw nothing. I checked the front door. It was locked tight. I walked back towards the kitchen, my heart starting to beat a little faster. As I passed the living room window, a flicker of movement outside caught my eye. I stopped and looked out, my hands pressed against the cold glass. The street was empty, lit only by the lonely glow of a single street lamp. Then I saw it. For just a second, a face was looking back at me from the other side of the glass. It wasn't clear, more like a pale, distorted shape against the dark background. It had wide, dark eyes and a mouth that was stretched into a silent, unnerving smile. It was there for a heartbeat, and then it was gone. I jumped back from the window, my breath catching in my throat. My mind was racing. Was that a person? A reflection? A trick of the light? I stood frozen in the middle of my living room, my eyes glued to the window, expecting the face to reappear at any moment. The silence of the house was now deafening. I ran to the window and pulled the curtains shut, my hands shaking so much that I could barely grip the fabric. My heart was pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. I backed away slowly, never taking my eyes off the covered window. Who was that? Why were they looking into my house? The questions swirled in my head, but there were no answers. I felt a surge of pure terror. The safety of my home was gone, replaced by a feeling of being watched, of being vulnerable. I felt like a bug under a magnifying glass, exposed and helpless. The familiar comfort of my living room had vanished completely. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers clumsy with fear. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? I think I saw a weird face in my window. They would think I was crazy. They would tell me I was imagining things. I decided to wait to see if anything else happened. I sat on the very edge of the sofa, hugging my knees to my chest, listening to every creak and groan of the house. The sitcom on the muted TV screen seemed to mock me with its silent, happy characters. My home, my safe space, now felt like a cage, and I was trapped inside with my fear. After what felt like an eternity, I started to calm down a little. Maybe it was just my imagination. I had been tired, stressed from the week. My mind could have been playing tricks on me. The brain is a weird and powerful thing after all. I took a few deep breaths, trying to rationalize what I had seen. It was probably just a weird reflection of a lamp on the glass, distorted by the darkness outside. Yes, that had to be it. I almost convinced myself. I unmuted the TV, needing the noise to fill the oppressive silence. The sound of the laugh track was a little comforting, a small piece of normalcy in a night that had gone completely sideways. But then, Mittens started to growl. It was a low, guttural sound that I had never heard her make before. Her fur was standing on end, and she was looking down the hallway again, her body crouched low to the ground. My blood ran cold. This was not my imagination. The cat saw it too, or at least she sensed it. I slowly turned my head to look down the same dark hallway. The only light came from the TV, casting flickering, dancing shadows on the walls. At the very end of the hall, just outside my bedroom door, I saw it. A shadow. But this was no ordinary shadow. It was tall and thin, much taller than a person should be. It was unnaturally dark, a patch of pure blackness that seemed to absorb the light around it. It wasn't moving, just standing there, a silent observer in the dark. I couldn't make out any features, no face, no clothes, just a vaguely human shape made of pure void. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. My entire body was paralyzed with a fear so intense it felt like ice water was being poured over me. My mind screamed at me to run, to get out of the house, but my legs wouldn't obey. I was completely and utterly frozen in place. The shadow stood there for what felt like a lifetime. It didn't make a sound. It didn't move a muscle. It just was. The feeling of being watched was overwhelming, suffocating. I felt a deep, ancient dread, a sense that I was in the presence of something that was not from this world, something old and malevolent. Then, as slowly as it had appeared, it began to retreat. It didn't walk away. It seemed to shrink back into the deeper darkness of the hallway until it was completely gone. The space where it had been was just an empty, dark hallway again, but I knew what I had seen. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the empty space where the shadow had been. It could have been minutes, or it could have been an hour. Time seemed to have stopped. Eventually, the feeling returned to my limbs. I grabbed Mittens, who was still trembling, and locked myself in my bedroom. I pushed my dresser in front of the door. I didn't sleep a wink that night. I just sat on my bed, holding my cat, and watched the sun come up. The first rays of morning light felt like a rescue. The darkness dissipated, and with it some of the immediate terror, but the memory remained, burned into my mind. The next day, in the bright, unforgiving light of morning, I tried to find a logical explanation. I checked the windows for fingerprints or smudges. I looked for footprints in the garden outside. I found nothing. Everything was exactly as it should be. There was no evidence that anyone had been there. There was no proof that anything had happened at all. My house looked perfectly normal, perfectly safe. It was as if the events of the previous night had been nothing more than a vivid, terrifying nightmare. A bad dream brought on by too much pizza and a stressful week at work. But I know what I saw. And Mittens knows too. She wouldn't go near the hallway for a week. She would just sit and stare at it from the safety of the living room, her tail twitching nervously. Was the face in the window connected to the shadow in the hall? Was it a ghost? A figment of my imagination? Some strange intruder who managed to leave no trace? These are questions that I ask myself every single day. The fear has faded into a dull, constant anxiety, a feeling of being unsettled in my own home. The place that was once my sanctuary now holds a dark memory. I never found any answers. The mystery remains a creepy, unanswered question mark hanging over my life. Sometimes, late at night when the house is quiet, I feel a chill run down my spine. I'll catch a glimpse of a strange shadow out of the corner of my eye, or think I see a pale face in a dark window. I tell myself it's just my mind playing tricks on me, a leftover echo of that one terrifying night. But a small part of me is never truly sure, and that is the scariest part of all. Not knowing if the monster was real or if it was all in my head.